Permissive. I'm not in. No.
No,
Hey,
please,
everyone. We're jumping right into the middle of the recording. If you've just joined us, this is the C4C weekly meeting. And we're joined by all these beautiful people. Everybody can say hi. Why not? Hi.
Hello.
Hello from upstate New York.
All right.
Hello from Texas.
Geneva is here.
Hello, goodbye. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye, Dylan.
Take it easy, Dylan.
I didn't. But Newman, maybe you start the recording as you started. Just give the point that you just say again the point that you mentioned. I think it would be good.
Right. And I think I guess it starts with when I joined the group. Like why I liked the group. It was the climate change, the challenge, or Cardano for climate, the challenge, and we had a proposal, and it was one of the first funds that I was involved in. And I was like, oh, climate change. Yeah, that's a hot button topic. It's really not me. It's something that I used to do, back in the 90s. And I would love to tell and love to hear everyone's origin story, like what their experience was when they started with climate activism or being interested in environmentalism, etc. But as I came back to Catalyst, it was Cardano for climate, the cooperation, and I was like, oh, okay, that's more interesting to me because I am interested in collaboration. I am interested in cooperation, and when the change, my mom just showed up. Hey, Mom. When the so basically it was how the cooperation, and we've kind of discussed the question, who are you? Like that's the ultimate question, and there that leads us to why you answer that question is to cooperate with others. And I feel that that cooperation is really the magic sauce of this endeavor. Yeah. So that was the point that I was making as we turned on the recording, and hopefully our conversation will continue. Yeah, well, here you go. I can tell my climate activism sort of story. I was involved. I just moved and gotten a new job, and I would love to hear this story from everyone. I just gotten a new job in a new city, and I was just looking for things to do. And there was a group called the Pachamama Alliance, and this was in 2008, and they were having a seminar, what they called a symposium. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, climate, that might be kind of fun. And they basically had this incredible multimedia experience where we listened to the rainforest and sat quietly, and it was just an exploration of understanding who you were in relation to what was going on in the planet around us. And it was really, really well done. And I was studying education and at the time, and it just really made an incredible impact on me. And it like Blaine was talking about earlier, it didn't require that you were one way or another. It's just everybody has this experience. Everybody is going through this human experience, and that we can, you can go farther into it in a supportive and loving way. And so I got involved with that, and then it sort of made me a lifelong believer in this magical experience that we're having. Does anyone else have a story of like when they became, like how they got to?
I'll jump on that one.
Yeah.
I love telling stories. So I had gone in high school through a med program at the local hospital in Manhasset in Long Island. And I was going to be a doctor. And we were pretty poor, so I had gone to a Marist Brothers High School, St. Mary's, and they got me a ticket to Marist College in Hudson, up in Poughkeepsie on the Hudson River, to go to school on kind of like the Catholic freeway. And 17-year-old freshman, I went up there, and there was this dude named Pete Seeger, who owned a boat called the Clearwater that applied the Hudson down to Long Island, doing studies of the river and environmental studies and stuff. And went out on the, got a ride on the Clearwater. It was like freshman orientation. And the crew, Pete Seeger, we shared a doob. And he asked me why I wanted to work on mankind and why not on the environment. And that was kind of my aha moment. And I changed from pre-med to an environmental science major in biology and started working on the Hudson River. And when I graduated college, I worked in an industrial plant cleaning up water dumping into the Long Island Sound. And then I became a capitalist pig. I'm coming full circle. My story. I'm sticking to it.
That's a great story. You know, having a direct relationship with the river and seeing things there for the first time.
Oh yeah, old man Hudson. I joined the sailing team. I was captain of the sailing team. I stayed around after college. I coached it, always on the waterfront. And then I became a scuba diver when I moved back to Long Island, and did a lot of diving down there, wreck diving and stuff. But always water oriented. Not so much thinking of global climate at that time in the 70s. It wasn't really a buzz. Water quality was kind of the, as you put it, for us hippies from mainstream, you know, that was kind of the buzz, is clean up the water. And we didn't know about microplastics or any of the hormones that were being dumped from the plastics and stuff at that time. And that's why I made my statement. It's, you know, kind of like you can't stop global climate change because there's a natural cycle to the earth, but you can, and I think it needs to be marketed differently, but you can effectively help mitigate humankind's influence on what we're doing to you know, accelerate global change. That we can stop. We can work to stop. And I'm positive, right. just like I said about normal, you know, it can be done.
Yeah, that mountain can move, right? Yeah. I guess maybe that is what's in the back of the mind. Is just like, okay, if we do these small things and don't keep doing the bad things, good, small, bad, good, you know, big, it's all relative, but that there is hope. It's another difficult concept. Yeah.
They all add up, right? Like there's I'm pretty sure it's a Tanzanian proverb. It's one of my favorites, called little by little, little becomes a lot. And I think that's such an important thing to think about, because essentially it adds weight to individual action, which otherwise you'd feel is insignificant. But that multiplied by 8 billion people, multiplied 365 days a year, that's a lot. So I think it's reframing the significance of what we do as well is important.
Yeah.
I can maybe jump in
Blaine,
for my
blockchain, Blaine, yeah. Tell us.
Environmental story.
Yeah.
So that started 5 years ago. I was traveling Thailand with my girlfriend at the time. I'm a wildlife conservation sort of a person. And I went there and I was completely oblivious to the kind of the dark, potentially dark side of elephant ecotourism there and elsewhere in the world. So I went to a few sanctuaries that were marketing themselves as being ethical, and I just had a bad feeling. And after a couple, I ended up doing my own research and kind of learnt about the whole process of how the elephants come to be in that position in the first place. And so that was kind of an uncomfortable feeling for me as a tourist, because I was wanting to do the right thing, but no matter how hard I tried, I ended up supporting something that was harming the animals. So I started thinking about, okay, there needs to be transparency within this industry. There needs to be some sort of a reputational scoring system to help that, tourists can reference so they can make better purchasing decisions. So I started Googling and discovered the blockchain as a tool that can promote transparency, has kind of reputational scoring systems, database of immutability. And then I started researching blockchain further and stumbled upon Cardano and was like, okay, this is a science-based thing. I believe in science. This is like a world-changing thing that, if it's going to work, will need to be based upon a foundation of science if it's going to work. And so that kind of, I was entered pretty thoroughly down the blockchain Cardano rabbit hole from that point. So that's kind of 2017. And at the time, I was just finishing my master's degree in architecture. And this was kind of in the background. And I was working on a multi-million-dollar shopping center, which again was not really what I was into. But I needed money, I needed a job, and it was a good job from that perspective. But when I moved city, I decided to kind of completely change path and decided not to work as an architect and try and figure out some sort of career that involved the environment and crypto somehow. And that led me to creating a conservation brand, which at the time was called Earth Offline. And the offline part was linked to crypto, because in crypto we have layer 1, layer 2. In my mind at the time, layer 0 was the offline layer. So that's kind of the naming rationale for that one. And then, yeah, that eventually led me to Discover and Power, and currently working there as a weird intersection between the architecture, the environmental stuff, and the blockchain stuff. It's kind of funny how, yeah, it's this weird combination of the three. So my blockchain story started with elephants.
The elephant in the room is you, right? The elephant architect. I mean, the elephant in the room.
I'll take it.
I was gonna say that's fitting because elephants are such major architects of the landscape and the ecosystem. With those tusks, that's basically like a forklift on 4 legs that can turn it just maintains like the savanna ecosystem and knocks down giant trees. So I too am inspired by elephants and all of their extinct and extant relatives.
Love it, brother. I love it.
Well, I could jump into my history. I don't know if there was like an aha moment with climate change. I mean, definitely, I guess when the Inconvenient Truth came out, it was like 2004. So I guess I was like 18 or 19. And just kind of remember being depressed about that. And but was still very much, I would say, blue-pilled at that age, and didn't realize just the power of, just the forces in the global world we have here that are working against us in every possible way to have a harmonious future. But it's funny, somebody who was it that mentioned normal? And in college, I was Students for Sensible Drug Policy. So that was my topic to try to champion. And it is really cool to see how much things have changed in that regard, drug policy wise. But I do think it's like a totally different problem, because drug policy is just like, there's bad policy. You can reverse that policy. People are no longer going into prison. People are able to access sacraments and whatnot. And, but, the whole global climate change, being related to, peak oil and food and everything. It's a much issue to resolve that I see that we can have. Like, at least in my brain, the greatest impact is through regeneration, because it just heals so many of the problems that we have, social, economic, just like having meaning in your life, down to like completely reversing things that are putting carbon in the atmosphere and desertifying landscapes, doing the exact opposite. And that's the future that I think makes me hopeful, working towards something that is hopeful. And I think we can have a lot of change. So, my story with environmental stuff just goes back as far as I can remember. I was just, growing up in the suburbs, kind of like near the Cherry Hill Mall, the first mall in America. And I was like, kind of going, around the neighborhood, around the mall, and like picking mulberries and blackberries and Japanese knotweed and stuff like that. So I've just always been a nature kid through and through. That's why I'm growing mushrooms now and working on blockchain. It feels like I'm exactly where I need to be. Although I wish I could clone myself so I could actually work on blockchain stuff more. But
Thanks, Tyler. Yeah, first of all, sorry for being late. I had to catch up. Thanks for the story.
One of the things that sorry, I might be just not in good reception right now, and people were talking. Here, I'm going to shut up for a second.
Go ahead. I think it's all right.
Cool.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm like pacing all over the place. I always forget that I have like intermittent coverage down here. Yeah, I just feel like climate change is such a big issue, like in the public consciousness, and is one that is, on the minds probably more than any other right now of the younger generations. And I think it's a topic that's been just like poisoned. Honestly, it's been co-opted, and we're at the point where like a lot of people think that the only institutions that can save us are the ones that have just been, subsidizing fossil fuels and not preparing us for a future of, de-escalating from fossil fuels. And right now we're at the point where, the economic system and the energy system is like collapsing, and with it, the food system. Like, it's just every week, looking at new data, it's like, this is really all coming to a head right now. And I feel like, just speaking for myself, what I would like to see in this group is just handling the topic of climate change responsibly. Like, how would a decentralized organization that is sort of like, we're these people in this ecosystem that are kind of like planting our flag, that we're going to take on the mantle of this topic of climate change, and how can we, foster open dialogues? How can we bring things to light that don't get enough kind of airtime? And how can we really see forward to like a future that is having decentralized, open solutions to a lot of these problems? And I think that if you just look back at our track record in this group, I think we've done a pretty good job of that. Like, during the tree conference, I loved hearing from, I can't even remember his name at this point, but just talking about the role of water and hydrology in climate and its ability, when you focus on that, how that can have huge, like short-term impacts and long-term impacts on climate change. So it kind of paints a more hopeful picture than just relying on carbon while we're still completely tethered to a system to survive that is based on putting more carbon into the atmosphere. So I think that's one thing. I think, you know, I love that we, as a group, tend to focus on regenerative agriculture quite a bit, that we're not afraid to take on, you know, plastics in the ocean, which might not seem like exactly connected, but we're making the connection and we're open to that connection. So I think we've done a really good job. But I like to keep that in mind, just that we are stewards of this topic, and how can we do it in a way that contrasts with the way that this topic's being handled in the centralized world. And I think that, you know, we'll be able to have a lot of impact if we can focus on that. And it might be, you know, like there's this, it's kind of interesting, like Nori brings up a lot, how it's not necessarily bad that we got the most downvotes. And I think it's because this topic, well, part of it is that this topic has been poisoned and there is so much disinformation. So, you know, why don't we have a conversation with Rick and try to bring these people in that are seemingly opposed to us and find common ground, and just show to the community that we can be good stewards of this thing, and that we are open and we're not going to stick to the dogma. We're not going to stick to what the UN says and centralized institutions are going to say. And we're really trying to attract people to Cardano that care about actually making a difference in this area.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Particularly, I like the stewardship idea. And you mentioned the tree conference, but you didn't mention your regenerative conference, which I heard that you spearheaded, and that was actually one of the things that brought me closer to the group. So that's I'm a direct descendant of the Regen Ag conference. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a Yorm's thing. It's just like there are things that we can do. You know, like those small tasks, like Blaine was saying, that little things that you know, add up. Little by little becomes a lot. Yeah, those are wonderful topics.
Absolutely. Like this week, my wife and I are looking at our bank, because in Canada, all the major banks are major funders of the gas and oil industry. And we can't put our money into banks that continue to do that. So we're trying to move, but it's hard because all banks in Canada contribute and loan money to gas and oil. So what's our choice? So we're really doing our research into local credit unions and other options. And those small things are things that each one of us can do. But if we all do it, then these major banks will need to change how they do things, because they'll no longer have the deposits required to do the business they do. So every little thing like that, even if it feels like you're just doing it by yourself, if we all think about those things. And I know, Head Elf, you have your hand up, but I just wanted to mention, related to this, I think there's a shift in, I don't want to say consciousness, but kind of our worldview that needs to happen as well. Because I think a lot of the issues that are caused by humankind are caused because of our predominantly Western mindset, where nature and environment are resources to be harvested. And the only value is when we dig it out of the ground or pump the oil out or create a pit mine and chop down the trees. And I think there's a lot of healing we need to do, especially in North America, where a lot of us are colonial settlers on indigenous lands. And the entire purpose of that was to steal land, essentially perpetrate genocide on entire populations in order to take their land so we can extract the resources. And as long as we don't actually hit all these angles and heal in all these places, I don't know that we're going to have sufficient momentum to really make meaningful change. And we need to heal that past trauma for sure, as somebody just put up on a sticky. And So that's kind of a journey that I'm going on as well. And my wife is she just decided to get her master's degree looking at land-based, place-based art education, looking at it through a lens of indigenous local knowledge, as well as looking at environmental and climate issues, as well as looking at the proper way to be stewards, not just stewards even, but thinking out if my existence here is going to affect 7 generations, how do I ensure that that 7th generation will be better off because I was here, rather than what's the most I can extract for myself now. So that kind of shift in thinking, I think, is going to be really important for us to make meaningful change. So yeah, but I think we all need to do a little bit at a time. And eventually, like Blaine said, that effect will just pile up and become a really powerful change over time. So, yeah. Sorry, you want to jump in, head out?
Laurie, I applaud your journey, and you're one small pebble into the pond. And I guess TD Bank is not going to have your money for long. Newman started it off, and the thing keeps coming back to, how do you eat an elephant, or the elephant in the room, and it's one small step. I used to be an idealist, and I guess to some extent I still am, but I also like the call to action. And what if, and I had the question, I raised it because we're looking at the proud dirt farmer DAO that we're forming, is how much energy do we use to issue an NFT? Is the NFT outstripping the energy policy? And that raised the question within our DAO members is how carbon green is Cardano? The word on the street, so to speak, is it's a pretty clean network. I'm also involved in the Pi network, which uses cell phones. Is that cleaner than Cardano, which uses small computers? What if, as a group, we started, I don't want to call it a policing or an assessing, but what if we figured out what Cardano's footprint is and a way to measure it? And then we started a rating scale on, because blockchain by PR and everything else is a bad industry, right? Because it's dirty, it's expensive, uses a lot of electricity, and so forth. Yet Tesla has a great reputation and it uses electricity. So what if we figured out what Cardano's footprint actually is, some way to measure it, and what it costs to put out an NFT on Cardano, and then we did that for every other blockchain, layer 0, Blaine, layer 1, layer 2, and becoming layer 3, and we actually helped everybody understand where Cardano and every other chain is in hurting or helping the environment. Just like Tesla, great PR in Tesla. Why are they so positively viewed? Because they're not using fossil fuel, but how much does it cost to build a charging station, et cetera, et cetera. But they've done good PR. And maybe the downvoting could be turned around with a positive image on positive things. The small elephant, the small piece of the elephant in the room. And by the way, I've never had elephant, but I would barbecue it.
Maybe a dry rub. Wait a minute. We're not supposed to eat elephants. Don't eat elephants. Elephants are our friends.
Yeah, so
Simon, yeah.
I think I heard the first time of climate change about like 12 years or maybe even a little bit more ago. And yeah, I mean, like back then I was too young to really realize, so it wasn't like such a urgent matter yet. but about 7 years ago, I got kind of intrigued by the topic, and I watched every YouTube video I could find, and that is also kind of how I got how I found Tesla and Elon Musk, because he has a very interesting talk on YouTube with very good arguments, in my opinion. And so I was very long trying to falsify that climate change even exists, because there was so much media hype about climate change not being real, and climate change is always, and so on. And who is supposed to I had a feeling that it was real, like I heard about it some time ago, but where is the evidence, right? So I even read some papers, and I think there's a very good one from Cook, a very prominent one that goes through other papers and shows that a lot of scientists basically are pretty confident that climate change exists. It's even a definition for that, like it is anthropomorphic, and it would have catastrophic impact on the world. And when I read that, that was, I think, a bit of a wake-up call, because catastrophic doesn't sound too good, and also the idea of CO2, warming a lot easier is, I mean, it just makes sense, right? Of course, the planet is warming then. Yeah, and a long time I felt like really helpless about it. So when I first met Melanie, and she had this idea of having a climate change challenge, I was on one end, I was like, all right, there goes another project where I'm not gonna get any money from. I'm not gonna get rich anytime soon, guys. And yeah, but I felt like it was too important to not do it, and that's how I got involved with the group. Yeah, also I saw there was just a need for me to, because I've been through a funding round already, and there was a need for someone to help out. I think it was also, I got engaged. Yeah, that's it. George?
I love that one. That's great, Simon. Now,
Thanks,
would you say the it's like that sort of personal, so what I understood from your story is like kind of getting involved with the media, searching through YouTube, finding some charismatic leaders, that are sort of like talking about the issues, also sort of getting the kind of weird static of like how is it, and then and then meeting up with the group here, Melanie in particular, which is really the thing that struck me. I was just like, yeah, when you make like a direct connection with someone that is like, hey, and then feeling the need and the draw, it's like, oh, I can help this. This is something I can do.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's the, yeah. The reason I bring that up is that I think that interaction, or that sort of like connecting with one other person, can really make a difference. Just in anything, whatever the goal is in mind, but person to person is in my opinion fundamental. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. I think I wouldn't have done this without Melanie.
Yep. Yeah. Likewise, that's my experience as well.
Same for me. It's when I joined, Melanie was the primary person who was facilitating the conversations and connecting me to different groups, and the C4C was one of the groups she put me through. And it's for me the journey coming from India to US. I found US very clean and everything. We see the green trees, the rivers, everything is there. And if I look back at India, and when I was young, that is 70s, and we had rivers, we had trees, and looking back now 40 years down the line, a lot of the things have been changed, and it's all buildings or things that have been taken up, or so it is a change from looking at two different worlds almost, between the developing world and the developed country here. And if we are able to use what has been done in a developed country, in a developing country or underdeveloped world, we would be way ahead. It's just a lot of things we do is from resources standpoint, we take the Amazon forest, we use all the resources at different places, but we do not really look at it as regeneration. What is the next thing to be done so the next generation can still do it? A lot of things is extracted out, and it's then we talk about the extraction, and we don't say, okay, we just need to put more plant more trees and get the process started. And so that always that there is that imbalance. And Cardano being the community, it opened up that discussion, saying, okay, what is the truth in it? How we look at it more decentralized. We are always looking for some centralized agency to be the guiding post. And now with Cardano or any of the crypto communities, it is the DeFi, it is a decentralized finance. Once we touch the finance, suddenly everyone wakes up like, what is happening? What is happening? He touched my money. Okay. So that was the wake up call for me. Like, I would say the change for me from understanding when we touch money or when we look for the money flow, you see something different. And we talk from a finance perspective, suddenly the things have a different outlook. And it is not everything, but it has a voice which is so different. Money power cannot be underestimated. So DeFi is my decentralization is the principle that brought me into the Cardano community. And so that's where my thoughts are still.
Yeah, that's interesting that Nori was talking about the banking, and George, that your fundamental change was with finances. Yeah, certainly that's something that I also shared. You have more like exactly how, or like, I mean, were you money oriented before, or were you a financial person before, or that type of thing?
For me, my total experience is in electrical engineering. So I was very tech-centric, tech-focused, looking at a small focus point of solution from embedded electronics. So I go even smaller into the embedded electronics. So, and into the firmware side of that. So the first 20 years was in product development. And then money was always a question. I never put my thoughts from a technical perspective into money. So I joined IEEE, a smart village, and there they do electricity for off-grid villages, and they use solar electricity as the primary mover and empower the local off-grid community to train them up to be able to run their own solar facility for their own model, whether it is brick making or their own crafts. So it could be any of the opportunity, honey farming or anything. And there I joined as a grant writer. So instead of joining a technical community, I said, okay, I will look at something different. And I said, okay, let me write grants. I will get more money from grants writing. So I volunteered in, but it opened up the finance aspect. What is happening inside the ISV, from how the money is handled, and how do we go to foundations to ask for money. And the last 2 years, I had been looking at money a little bit differently. And one of the books was called Winner Takes All. It is in one of the links there we put in the submissions, and it's by an author called Anand Giridharadas. He says, okay, when you look at bigger companies, they have grown so big, like 100 billion Bezos. It's all like, it's not just that way. It's like if you look back 20 years, they were at a certain space, and the value for their work was at a probably he was 90% of his accounts or Amazon stock. And then 10 years later, the company has expanded. Still, they hold 90%. So, and another 20 years, and now we are at a 1.4 trillion evaluation or something for Amazon, and still he is holding a major piece of the puzzle. So, but the company has expanded 1,000 times or 10,000 times, 100,000. So still they hold that magnitude of their value, what they held in the beginning. And so that is another trigger point, which the bigger one is the 2008 mortgage crisis, when the banks did the mortgage crisis. And the mortgage itself, when we look at it, it is like 10x or 20x of virtual money given by the central bank to the government gives a 20x leverage for these banks. Say you have 1 million asset, you can do 20 million in leveraged mortgage. So the mortgage itself is a leveraged item, and the crisis happened, and the government gave them 1.5 trillion, and they went and took it all, and they didn't pass the benefit to the people down who are really impacted. But they gained both ways, meaning they got the leverage of 20x from the government, and they got the money, and then they foreclosed everyone below. Like it was kind of a worst case scenario in all directions. And that's where the understanding of money started. I started asking slightly different set of questions. What is happening? How is the banking, centralized banking, influencing it? And the decentralizing aspect of crypto came in as a very strong eye opener for me in that. So those are the pieces of the puzzle for me, and that's my journey into Cardano. Cardano has been very powerful for me. In general, crypto has been, the DeFi has been a very powerful principle for me, and that's my journey in.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, that's wonderful. Likewise for me, I don't know if anybody's got their hands up, but I think that I mean 2008 definitely was that trigger point. Was that when something's not right in the financial system, and then it was very plain. It wasn't easy to explain away. And we talk about like media, sort of like a movie here, a movie there, but I watched The Big Short that was sort of, and then Trading Places. I was like, oh, is this, like there's some real chicanery going on here. And then, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is sort of like the people that have been researching this were saying, look, this is this is an example, and I do think that that is a foundational part, just like you were saying about, well, you were a technical person and that you got involved with the Smart Village project, and you're like, oh, okay, well, what if I try to step out of my comfort zone and work with these grant writing, and then seeing how the money works. Yeah, follow the money is a real thing. It is foundational to what this society, is about. Sort of like what Nori was talking about like resource extraction. Like everything has a dollar sign, and in my life, I realized that. I was like, oh, everything has a dollar sign. There is value, and then how to make that value sort of work. And cryptocurrency has that, at least that as their reason. It's like we could try to mess around with those levers. It's like, what has value? What, how can we trade that value in a more equitable, more responsible, more open way.
Yeah.
Does anyone?
Yeah, I will jump in as well. Yeah, I mean, also here I'm in this group, so thanks to Melanie, and we spoke about taking little action. So she took a little action in the last minute, but saying, Dole said something, if you have an idea, just do it, right? And in the last minute kind of just puts your idea on idea scale. And she put, let's create an impact challenge, right? And then people started to gather around that. So from a small action, if we want to call it like that, actually doing something, here we are 8 months later, 4 events, hundreds of people that came through, discussions. I mean, a lot of things that happened, right, through taking small action. So that's kind of that. And I think, and my story, I mean, how much time you have? No, I'm kidding. I mean, my story started, the big one is that, for me, is that I married someone that is very different from me. I live out of my comfort zone. And you mentioned comfort zone, Newman. So I live out of my comfort zone, and I got married to someone from Israel, and I got married to someone in Argentina. And, that process already starts you think differently from many aspects that you are used to, right? Because you meet something that you'd never know. And then I got one time a book about 18 years ago, 20 years ago, actually, a book called Decentralization and Discontent, which spoke about, it's not decentralization, sorry, globalization and discontent, by, which is a book by, I forgot the name, but the Nobel Prize for Economic. And that kind of blew my mind. I used to travel a lot at this time to Argentina, and this book spoke about all against the IMF and all of this organization. And that started really to kind of be a turning point in my life, to start rethinking, when we speak about the UN and when we speak about IMF and what does really happening, and starting questioning and seeing all of these things. But so that's kind of a story of my life. But and then I used to, have a job and work and all of that. And 5 years ago, I kind of said it's enough and joined an NGO working on agricultural supply chains. I had no clue about agricultural supply chains when I joined them, but I found myself traveling a lot to Indonesia specifically and working with farmers there. And my role was, how can I actually help to build business models in order to scale the impact, right, of what they are doing. And on the other hand, this organization works so on the ground with farmers in different places in the world. On the other side, you work with 100 multinationals like Nestle, Mars, Ferrero, all of these guys. So there was a big opportunity actually to create business models and connect it to in a sustainable way for the farmers and for nature, and actually connect it to the multinationals. But I, working with them for a few years, I got quite frustrated, and I figured out that if you want to scale impact, really the big thing is to give transparency and traceability. Because I think if you really want to move consumers, multinationals, and so on, we need to show transparency and traceability. Because everyone is speaking about impact and how impactful they are. If you read Nestle financial statement, 50% speak about how impactful they are and how environmental they are, and right, all of that. But if you see, okay, but You know, if you check how much they're actually investing in that, it's probably less than 0.5%, right, of the financial system. So this transparency and traceability is something that kind of got stuck in my head of how can we create that. And this is why I started to investigate about blockchain technology. And in the beginning, I started, a little bit like Blend Road and Roadmap. And I started in different one and looked on different solutions. And then I kind of find my place and home in Cardano and Catalyst. And from there it's kind of mind blowing and what we can do and how can we achieve, what can we achieve. And I agree 100%, and thank you for leading this discussion, Newman, and that, you know, every action counts. But my kind of all mindset and what I'm trying to think about is how we can create this transparency, traceability in different ways in order to everyone, then everyone can decide what they want to do, right? If we're able to tell multinational, okay, on your supply chain, the land quality is going down, okay? If we're able to show it at scale, then okay, decide what you want to do. But everyone is clear, the information is clear for everyone. And the same for consumer. I think consumer today are quite confused. You know, I'm going to the supermarket, I see 50 types of sustainable chocolate. I mean, I'm really confused as a consumer what I need to buy and so on. And so then you buy, because I mean, there is a lot of issues from the NGOs I work with actually certification, and there is a lot of issue with certification in general. If anyone that goes to the ground and work on the ground understand there is a huge issues with certification. And also they're missing a lot of credibility and transparency. Microfinance industry, you know, it's a $40 billion industry that's supposed to be an impact industry. What's the real impact on the ground? No one really knows, right? And what's the real impact on the farmers, on the people on the ground? So this is where I came out from. So I mean, how can we, this is why it's so exciting for me to be here. And a lot of my proposals are around that. How can we create transparency from the ground, right? Boots on the ground transparency. Joe spoke about the money flow, you know, where the money is going, what the money is actually doing, right? That's really what I'm passionate about. And I want to add something also that on a personal level, I mean, I still need to do a lot more. You know, it's, I'm dedicating my time and doing, but there's always, you feel that you can do more, right? So sometimes I have this, I still live in a house, and I have cars, right? And I'm consuming and I'm traveling a lot, many times for pleasure. So yeah, I still don't, it's something that I can still do much more. And I think having people and getting inspired from people by small action and being a community that inspire you, for me, I think it's very helpful, because then you put more attention to the small thing that you are doing. So yeah, so really appreciate all of you. And I think it's, inspiring people that our action counts, I think will make me personally make more attention to what I'm doing, and hopefully inspire more people as well. That's my story.
Love it. Transparent supply chains is a massive thing.
It's a big challenge.
Shall I go ahead?
Yeah, please, sir.
Okay.
So my journey started in about between 2003 and 2005. What happened is I was working really long hours, about 18 to 20 hours a day. I was busy building an e-commerce platform for small people to compete with big people. So it was a whole logistics and warehouses and stuff all integrated into one another. So I was building a very technical thing. And then I thought I need a hobby. Nobody can work all this time on one thing and not. And then I looked at this Inconvenient Truth movie that came out, and I thought, you know, what's the story here? Is it real? Is it not real? What's happening here? So then I started investigating it, and I found out that the press is telling you one story and the scientist is telling you something different. And I just got so entrenched in that whole conversation, trying to figure out how this whole thing sits together. And then I put building blocks together to try and understand this more and more. And eventually it led me to question money. Who creates the money in the economy? How does it work? How does all this, and what I found out, that I really know so little about our fiat current money system that it was scary. For example, if I have a little new country and I call it Zoroland, for example, and I want to buy something with 10 Zoros in that land, where does the 10 Zoros come from? Who creates that money? How does it come into being? And then I went down that whole path and try and understand how this gets created to actually get money in the economy, right? And then, yeah, I've just started putting stuff together, and I'm in the belief that if we do not combine money and nature in some form or shape in the future, we won't have a future. So, and then I started engineering something that could work in that capacity to actually combine money and nature together, so that when we buy something, the first thing is it should work into the price. It should be advantageous for the buyer and the seller to be environmentally friendly, number one. And number two, we should actually be consciously aware of what we're doing to the environment on every single transaction we do in life, if that's if we want to make something work. So yeah, that's been my journey. So in between, I've done a lot of stuff. I've tried to build earthships in Malawi. I've done like a ton of stuff to try and get more sustainable and do all the other stuff. But yeah, that's really where my passion lies, is in the combining the financial side with the environmental side. So yeah.
Like it. I think maybe just to add something to that. Yeah, I'm also very big on integrating money somehow into these eco impact, social impact sorts of things, because the way that I view it is from the angle of scale. Like, there's these issues that we're dealing with are massive, and they require scalable solutions, and money is kind of is a tool that can probably scale the greatest. So if you can integrate good money into a solution, then you can, if the solution is sound, then you can kind of scale that up a lot more with money, plus other kind of scaling tools, network effects, and I don't know what other ones would be. Money and networks are probably the two that come to my mind. But yeah, but often money has a stigma, especially in the environmental circle, which is unfortunate, I think, because that's actually counterproductive. I think there can be bad, like money itself is neutral, but there can be bad financial systems, and I think we've been exposed to bad financial systems. But money itself, I feel like it's neutral. It's dependent on where we get that and how we spend it, maybe.
So I'll just explain quickly how money gets created in the economy, which is fairly interesting. So I told you this is brand new. So say your screen is Zoroland and one of these blocks is costing 10 Zoros. Where does the 10 Zoros come from? Well, the answer is, what you need a registered credit provider to provide credit. And what you do then is you say, I want to buy this block of land for 10 Zoros. You go to the credit provider. They don't have any money, right? Nobody's got money. So you go to the credit provider and you fill in a piece of paper that says, I promise to pay back the 10 Zoros plus interest. The piece of paper that you pledge as a promise, that is the money. So the bank takes that money and they put it on the asset side of their books, and to balance their books, they type into a computer 10 Zoros. And that creates the 10 Zoros in the economy. So as a financial system, how we currently have designed this, if there's no debt, there would be no money. The more a country is in debt, the better their citizens are off. If you look at all the countries that are rich, they have a lot of debt. if you look at all the countries that are really poor, they don't have any debt. It's completely whack the way that people think it works, but that's how it actually works. So we've got a debt-based money system, and that's why we're staring a recession straight in the face, because everybody's indebted into their eyeballs and nobody can get out of it. So something is going to break and something's going to change. And this is our opportunity to actually make it happen, because yeah, that's just the nuts and bolts of it. So it's going to happen. It's got to break at some stage. So, interesting.
That's
Yeah,
incredible. Yeah.
I passed up the opportunity to buy Bitcoin multiple times actually, and yeah. So when I finally decided to do more research on blockchain, I was really. I mean, first of all, I didn't understand money at the time, so it was a rabbit hole for me. But also at some point it just made click, and I think many people have had this experience where you're like, oh, absolutely. Why didn't I understand that earlier? Yeah, anyway, so one thing I wanted to say as well, because I forgot to say it earlier, is I've been to Thailand a while back, and I've been diving there. And I didn't, like when I was diving there, it's not too long ago, a few years, it was really saddening, diving on my holidays in Thailand. It's not how I imagined it. And actually last year, Cem told me, or told us, I think he told us in a group, he said he basically explained the same experience in Turkey, because he's a diver, or he was a diver in Turkey some time ago, and the reefs there that supposedly were very beautiful, they're just gone. I mean, that is something that makes me very, very sad, because I really want to see coral reefs, and even the coral reefs in Australia. I saw a documentary where it showed that a huge percentage of it has been dying, and even with all the effort that they're making trying to restore it, and it's not going to be as beautiful and colorful as it was before. And I mean, just that thought that I'm never going to see this wholesome beauty of the coral reefs, I mean, that's really sad, right? And all the future generations, they're going to have it worse. Yeah.
Yeah. On that coral reef part, there's a complex nuance to this problem, and that is, like, obviously there's coral bleaching, which is happening around the world due to climate, like rising sea temperatures. But one consequence of that is when people see these things, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, that actually deters people from going there and looking at that place in person. And then that has negative side effects for the ecotourism operators there that use their funding to protect the reef. So I've got a few friends that work there, and there's this interesting challenge around communicating what is happening, and also continuing the tourism there, which in turn supports the people trying to solve the problem. And so this just goes back to how complex this problem is. It's not just about blasting out what is wrong. We need to have like a nuanced approach to it, because if we're not careful, we can have the opposite effect of what we intended. It's
right.
There's nuances to all of it. It's not an easy problem.
Yeah, also, I mean, I'm sure there's like still nice and beautiful places, but they're getting rare.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
in my view, I'm not an expert on data, right? But I mean, it's becoming a scene.
Yeah, sea temperatures are rising. That has negative side effects. One is the turtles. You know, turtles, their gender is determined by the temperature of the like the temperature. I'm pretty sure it's cool. The hotter the temperature, the more males or something. So pretty much what's happening is all the turtles are becoming just one of the genders, and they can't, you know, reproduce. Obviously, I'm not a turtle expert, but that's the non-expert rundown on that sort of thing. It's these are just things that you don't think about when you think of. Huh?
You're not a turtle expert, you're the elephant in the room expert, so that's part of it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Tefa, maybe you want to say something, sir, as well? I mean, just say you didn't speak here yet, if you feel like. And also, yeah, how are you, sir?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Yeah, I was just working and I was listening, and it's really very inspiring, the entire conversation. I don't know. My story is a bit different than from most people here. I am from Ethiopia, and I was born in one of the remotest areas in the country. Still doesn't have as much access like road or anything. 16th century, and I'm living in 20th. A bit extreme and difficult to explain how I feel, and how seeing the people who are living down there and how it makes me feel. And the solutions, the solutions that I have seen until now in the last 60, 50 years, 40 years, I've seen them all fail. And probably the only thing that have the chance of working for those people that I know, some of them are my family, are that gives hope, is that blockchain technology may help that. I think that's the only thing I can say from my own experience. But my journey is I'm as an individual, I've been burning I'm a marine engineer, so I've been working on a ship for over 20 years, and I've been burning fossil fuels. So every one of you can really accuse me of shout at me about that. But I'm trying. I've been also trying to change, at least to not do that, or at least compensate for that, by being involved on environmental issues and social issues, because environmental issues are not separate from social issues. If you don't solve the social problems, you cannot solve the environmental problems. So I think that's my story.
Yes, incredible, and I'm adding that. I mean, thank you, Tefa, for that. Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, what you just said, that I mean, the last 50, 60 years, no solution made an impact on your people on the ground, with the boots on the ground, right? So a lot of money moves between a lot of people, but it doesn't get to the ground, right? And I think we spoke here, I mean, in this incredible session about a lot about actually money and financials, and in this and basically the problem with that, and the transparency that doesn't exist there, and that doesn't get to the ground. And so that's kind of the big things. And from the other side, I love the perspective that Newman brought, is actually the personal things of who am I, what I'm doing. So it starts with us, right? With everyone, what I'm doing, what we are doing. I mean, maybe if you ask this question and you work in the microfinance industry and you ask this question, maybe you ask, okay, but does my work actually make the impact that we want to make or not, right? So this who am I think is very critical.
Quick comment on the microfinance. Maybe the Kiva model, what they it's been very successful from what I had seen. I've been with the Kiva model for probably last 5 or more years, and the Kiva model, I would say, is successful because the lending, what we are doing, it continues, meaning it doesn't stop with the one time. It comes back and you refinance again. So the lending model wise, it is a continuous model, expecting the receiver to who has received to return, so that it continues the chain reaction. So so if you are invested $2,000 and you are investing again and again and again, it now I can see I had put in maybe few $1,000. Now my loans probably is around $35,000 or $40,000. So it has repeated. Did it really benefit the people? I think so, because they were able to return the return on investment. I'm able to get the money back, which says that they had benefited from that money and they are able to pay back what they had received. It doesn't mean there was no delinquency, but there was a very small number. So the Kiva is again a small portion, a trust model where they are interested with the money and they're able to come back. But so that is my take from a Kiva model standpoint.
Yes, so I love the Kiva model, and I also lend there for 10 years, whatever the recycle. So I love this model. But we don't know the real impact, and the Kiva model, it goes through banks eventually. It doesn't go directly to the people. It goes to banks that actually charge 15-20% interest from the people. So there is a big interest. So the big question is, if through these models, and I know, by the way, some microfinance institution here that lend money to local microfinance institution in some countries that actually, for example, there are chemical companies that lend money to the farmers, but then you need to buy back chemicals from the factory, right? So it's kind of, so I mean, there's a lot of issues there. What I'm saying is that the big question, if it's really impacting, improving the life of the person that is lending the money or not, and the person and the environment. And the answer is that we don't really know. I mean, us giving the money, you give the money to Kiva, to the model, you don't really know. I'm there for 10 years. I don't really know if I made an impact or not on the specific person, right? And
some stories are captured back.
Yeah.
Some feedbacks are there. Again, it is not. Again, the amount of time you are willing to track is also that time. So we want to give, and we want to say, okay, there is some feedback, but I'm not going to trace it to zero. What is happening there? And definitely the business is, when we look at other countries, have like a 15% interest or 30% interest. The middlemen do take a huge portion, but again, this is a new model. Can it be better? Yes, it can be, but it is a.
And Joe, don't get me wrong. The Kiva model is great, but if you look on most of the microfinance industry, so there is pension fund giving money to a microfinance bank that give money to normally a microfinance institution in Switzerland many times, that give money to a local microfinance institution in the country, that give money to the local entrepreneurs. Everyone in the middle make money. I mean, the microfinance industry is so proud that everyone actually make money. But the question if the entrepreneur on the ground actually get better, right? So in Kiva is different because the people that give in Kiva doesn't actually make money, right? It's only the local bank local finance bank that actually manage it, but Kiva itself and the lender, which is the people, doesn't make money. But anyway, but this is a different industry. I hope I actually made a proposal about it. I hope to research that more deeply with the microfinance people and have suggestions. But anyway, it's already, Kiva is doing definitely good stuff. So 100%.
Yeah. The one aspect you mentioned previously about the supply chain, and I remember this particular scenario happened in India. There was sandalwood. Sandalwood is a very pricey wood tree in India, and it's used because of the fragrance on that wood, and they make a lot of cosmetic applications from that. And they used to have a mountain range of trees there, and they used to have a smuggler who would smuggle the sandalwood trees and cut it. So they said, okay, let's get him. But they never said, okay, once they get him, they stopped it, meaning everything stopped kind of scenario. But they never questioned, okay, once the wood is cut, who is benefiting from that? Because he's in a forest area, he is not the beneficiary of that wood. He is just another layer there who is exploited by the next layer of money players and the next layer of money players. So the money and the wood kept flowing down the chain, but no one was willing to say, okay, who is the politician or the power, money power, which is really playing the role in this. They stopped at the final step saying, okay, we caught that smuggler, then our job is over. So it's always when it comes to the natural resources, that question is like, again, the money flow. Like if you are able to track the money flow and the resource itself, the wood itself, where is it flowing, it gives a lot more direction. And the blockchain is a powerful enabler in that model, as you said, like having that continuity of information instead of saying the wood is cut, I'm done. It's not that. There is the money flow and there is the wood flow. It moves to the next product, and then the final consumer. So if you are able to see the full chain, then it gives a totally different value story. It doesn't stop at the Amazon forest. It comes to the Western world. It doesn't stop at one point. It continues through. It goes to the Swiss bank, for example. So it is a continuity. So if we are able to follow the thread, the blockchain is a good enabler in that. Like, can we enable that thread so that people don't hide behind, because we are single-mindedly looking at only one point where the resource is taken.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I mean, it's so important. And actually, Cardano Foundation and Cardano, they're going to put a lot of efforts on supply chain. They're trying to do supply chain transparency. So that's something maybe that we can see how can Cardano for Climate take a role in that and support that somehow. But it's very, very important. So Newman, I don't know, I mean, in 10 minutes we have the town hall, and I don't know if you want to discuss something else, or can we? Yeah.
No, I thought that was fantastic. That was really, really great. I was in my mind, I had this idea of just learning everyone's story, you know, and the angles that we came in on. So I feel like we really accomplished that.
Yeah, so thank you for leading this discussion. And I added again the mirror board that everyone, we added a few people added the remarks, the things that we discussed, so we can reflect on them. And if any of the information there is, you want to add information or change information or adjust information, just do it. I think it will be very helpful for us to go through that again, and and then help us as a community decide. I mean, the new vision or the vision that we want to show and the action that we want to do.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
One other point, Yoram, like from the continuity perspective, we have the C4C as like an umbrella, and there are a lot of other connections, whether it is algae token or tree planting, different teams coming together, mushroom. So if you are able to put those connections, then people coming into the umbrella can move into any of the organizations where they can work with them on the ground truth they want to work with. It could be one, it may be two, but they can choose and move in that direction. So we want to show that at C4C is more at the higher level, and here it diverges into 10 different angles or 20 angles. Which angle do you want to pick, and you want to join this team and work with to be a little more of a contributor. So the C4C is a higher umbrella structure. How do you see it? I'm not sure. Is that the C4C direction, or you see C4C different way?
No, I mean, it's how we see it, right? I mean, this is the purpose of what we discussed. So it's a great point. And yeah, I think I added it already to the mirror as well, what you mentioned now. And yeah, and this is exactly how we want to see C4C going forward, right? And
I
define
agree.
that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's sort of a great summary, sort of a capstone of what this conversation was about, is that now we can kind of see we all have these personal stories. They all sort of gravitate around these main topics. And now if we can codify it or visualize it for new people coming in, and really for us, individually, and say, oh, wow, I really am. Like, maybe we need to do more, financial, like, okay, what, transparency. Okay, let's go for now filtered through for transparency projects or logistics, supply chain things. And for me, it's sharpened my focus and helping me get to the impact, how I can work here with everyone here to make an impact. For me personally, it's like, oh yeah, now I understand. This is an identity thing, and so I've got this idea to make a portfolio, and those type of things are sharpened and made clear in this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, and the visualization part is very, very important. I mean, if we're able to actually make this visualization and touching point, I think that's very, very important to understand. It's a very good point.
Yeah. George's sort of idea, I think we can make. I'm willing to effort into that for sure.
Perfect. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. See ya.
Thank you, everyone.
Yo.